Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. Thank you all for stopping on my space today. So in today's tutorial guys, I'll be sharing with you all what to see right here, which is an off-shoulder bustier gown with puff sleeve and side ruffles. So I made use of 2 years in the creation of this dress, and also the fabric which I used as a combination is a crepe. So that is it, and the next thing I did was to draft a basic bodice behind the camera, of which I've done on this channel countless of times, and I'm pretty sure that you all are already familiar with this. If you're not, please check up on the channel. I have tutorials on how to draft a perfect basic bodice. So having explained all of that, I'll just start by explaining what each of these lines stands for, in case you're not familiar with that. Now the first line you see there labeled my shoulder is my shoulder line. Then from my shoulder to the line labeled CL is my chest line. From my shoulder to the line labeled BP is my bust point. And from my shoulder to the line labeled UB is my under bust, and from my shoulder to the line labeled HL is my half length. I hope that is clear enough. So the next I'm going to do is to divide my nipple to nipple point of 7 inches into 2, and I went ahead to mark what I had got right there on all of these lines. So once I'm done marking, I'll use my stress ruler and connect these points. So the next I'm going to determine is my neck depth. So for this dress, I'm working with a neck depth of 4 inches as requested by my client. So I went ahead to mark these 4 inches and connect it into a straight line. So the next I'm going to do right here is to also mark that my nipple to nipple point divided into 2 on that exact line, and also connect this line to touch my neck depth, my new neck depth. Okay, so on the bust, that's the line labeled UL, towards the side going the center front of my dress, I marked half of an inch, and towards the side going to the side of my dress, I marked 1 inch. So I'll use my ruler and connect from my half length up to my under bust, just like this. After this connection, I'll come right to my bust point, and I'm going to come down from that point by half of an inch, and also from that point I'll go up by half of an inch, and I made these 2 points right there. So the next I'll bring my curve drew, and from that half of an inch I came down from my bust point. I'm going to just connect it like this up to my under bust line. So I'm going to repeat the same thing for the 2 sides. So you can see what I have here already. So I'll come to my newly created neck depth on that line, and I'm also going to repeat the same thing towards the side going to the center front of this my dress of my basic bodice. I'm going to mark half of an inch, and towards the part going to the side or the armhole side, I went ahead and marked 1 inch. So I'm going to also connect up to that half of an inch I came up by on my bust. So you can see what I have right here is already giving it a nice shape. So the next thing I'm going to do is to tighten this, okay, to avoid gaping. So at the both sides on this my already created that I'm going to mark 1/4 of an inch. So do note that a tightening is never replaced. The only thing we replace is our dart. Okay, so I went ahead to connect the exact way I connected for my dart. So if I'm replacing now, the only thing I'm going to replace right here is my dart and not my tightening. Okay, so I extended that line, and I'm just simply going to replace this 1.5 inch that I created right here. As you can see, I didn't include the tightening I made right here. So from my armhole line, I'm just simply going to replace that 1.5 of an inch, and I'm going to create a new armhole. So guys, you can see what I have here already. The next thing now go on ahead to do is to divide my underbust into 4, and I had 6 3/4. I marked it right there, and also divided my waist circumference on the line labeled HL, and I made a point right there. After that, I used this my stretch ruler to connect all of these points. So remember that on the chest line already I divided my bust circumference into 4, so that's how I got my bust circumference on my chest line. Okay, so I went ahead to replace my dart of 1.5 inches on my underbust and half length, and I went ahead to connect like this. So the next thing I'm going to do is to give this my sewing or my stitching allowance. So the stitching allowance I'm going to give this right here is a stitching allowance of 1.5 inches. Okay, so I went ahead to mark that on my chest line and on my underbust and also on my half length. So after making these points, I'll go ahead and use my ruler and connect these points. So all of these parts and marking X and also shading will be totally cut out. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and cut all of these out. Please follow the same way that all of this was drafted. My video actually cut before I could realize that it wasn't recording, but you can see that I brought the middle part of this dart to show you that I cut it out, and this is exactly what you should have. So just follow the way you drafted and cut out, and you're going to have the exact same thing. So I went ahead as well to also label this my center front and my side front. Now here I went ahead to cut out another piece of paper that will be enough to draft the back part of this my gown. So firstly, from the edge of this paper, I started by marking 1/2 inch, and this 1/2 inch point I'm making right here, I'll be connecting with a straight ruler. So once I'm done connecting with a straight ruler, I'm just going to label it because that is actually my zip allowance. So the next thing I'm going to do is to start marking all my measurements, and don't forget that for the front basic bodies 4 inches was used as a neck depth, so I had to just subtract 4 inches from here and now mark my bust points, my under bust, my half length, and also my chest line. So that's simply all I did there. I subtracted 4 inches. I placed 4 inches above this my paper, as you saw what I did right here, and I marked all these necessary points here. So I'm going ahead now to extend this into a straight line. So the next, I divided my shoulder into 2 and went ahead to get it. I connected it to this line labeled CL. So I went ahead to label this again in case you are a bit confused. Okay, so it's just the same thing. The only thing is that I didn't start afresh to draft a fresh basic bodies. So on the chest line, I divided my bust circumference into 4, and what I had, I made a point on my chest line, and on the top of my paper I came in by 1/2 inch to create that curve we usually have on the armhole. So I also went ahead to also mark my nipple to nipple point on all of these lines because I'm also going to create a waist dart. So the dart that will be created for the back of this dress is slightly different from the front part. So on the dart leg, I came out at both sides by 1/2 inch, and I'm going to connect all the way to that point where I came down by 1/2 inch from my bust point, as you see me doing like this right here. So that's it, and the next thing I'm going to do is to give this my back bodies a little or slight curve because I don't want it straight. So you can see this is all I did right here, and I'll go ahead now to insert or input all my other measurements right here. So I've already gotten my my bust circumference on my chest line, so I went ahead to add 1.5 inch, which is going to serve as my stitching or sewing allowance. I repeated the same thing for my under bust divided by 4, and also my waist circumference divided by 4. So I went ahead to connect these points, of which when I'm done I will go ahead and also add my stitching or my sewing allowance. But before that, I have to replace this dart intake which I gave right here. So you can see the dart intake I have here is 1 inch, so I went ahead to replace it just like this. So after this, now I'm free to now include or add my stitching or my sewing allowance, of which I will use my ruler and connect into a straight line. So guys, this is it right here, and the next thing is to give this our zipper slope to avoid the bulginess at the back of the zip. So from the half length, I came up by 5 inches, and I'm simply going to slightly connect from the 5 inches all the way down to my half length. So the next thing I'm going to do is also to tighten the back part of this dress. So I extended that all the way to my shoulder, and on my dart line, I'm going to come out on both sides by 1/4 of an inch and connect this way. This is for tightening the upper part, and not I'm not creating any dart here. I'm actually tightening to avoid gaping. Gaping is G-A-P-I-N-G. So that's it. So now I'm done with all of this, and the next thing I'm going to simply do is to cut out all of this piece exactly the same way I drafted. So I went ahead to also retake all these measurements to ensure that everything aligns. Okay, so make arrows of where will be joined to the other, because by the time you cut out all of this, you'll be so confused. So make arrows so you know the parts that are going with the other side. So after cutting all of this is all I have left, and I'm going to give my front center piece a slight curve, just like this. I didn't want it too deep or inside, just a slight curve. So I'll go ahead and cut out on my fabric and my lining piece, and also my stay, as you can see right here. And I went ahead to give this a sewing or stitching allowance all around. I gave it for the top parts, the side, and also the base or the hem of this my dress, because it wasn't added while I was drafting. So you can see I did it for all of this piece, and please kindly do the same thing I did right here. So I went ahead to unpin this from the center front to show you what it looks like. So you can see what I have right here, and the next thing I'm going to do is to place my stay on this my fabric. So your stay usually have this rough side and the smooth side. So the rough side is usually the part that sticks to your fabric, so you should be facing your fabric directly. Okay, so I also went ahead to also draft for the skirt part of this my gown. So if you don't really know how to go about this, I have a tutorial. That's the last tutorial uploaded before this, on how to draft a perfect skirt. So please do watch that, and I'll also be pinning the link to that video in the comment section. So I went ahead to iron all my stay on my fabric, and you can see how nice this is looking. So for the center front, I went ahead to fold it into total iron in order to give me this crease line, which is going to serve as my guide by the time I want to pad this my dress. So the next thing is to pad. I went ahead to get this my breast pad. Please, this is not a wording and it's not gummy, it doesn't stick. Normally I use a wording, but for this I don't have a wording, so I had to make use of what I had. So from the under bust line, I'll just fold in like this. You can see what I did right here. You can go ahead and pin yours if you're not really conversant with cutting out without pinning first. But from the under bust, you're going to fold this and cut out from exactly your under bust. So opening this up, you can see what I have right here is already looking so fine. So you know that while I was cutting out on my fabric, at the top part of my fabric I added half of an inch. So that half of an inch, I'm going to minus or reduce it or remove it from this my breast pad, because it's not needed or necessary. Okay, so that's all for this, and I'll go ahead as well to also cut out for the side, for the breast pad for the side of my dress. So I also folded my breast pad into two, and the next I will do is to get this my drafted pattern paper. So in order for me not to make a mistake, I traced out the under bust area, and I also went ahead to also use it to trace out my bust point line. I made all this point right on my breast pad because it's going to serve as a guide. So from that my bust point, I went ahead to mark 3.5 inches, and I made a point right there. And at the top area, I'm going to start tracing the front part of this my side front and stop exactly on the under bust like this. So removing that breast pad, I'm going to trace from the top to the 3.5 inches I marked all the way to my under bust. So this is like the simplest or easiest method on how to cut out your breast pad to pad your bustier. Okay, so you can see how I traced all of this out. I'm going to shift all of this one side, but I'm also going to reduce 1/2 inch from this because I also did it for the center front. So you can see what this looks like. It's already looking so fine. So the next I'm going to do now is to start stitching. So I'm going to start stitching. So to start stitching, I have to get the center of this my breast pad, because I'm going to place it on my front piece or my center piece. So I'm going to come down by 1/2 inch. It's not meant to start from the edge or the top of my fabric. I'll come down by 1/2 inch, and you can see that I'm measuring it to ensure that it's still 1/2 inch I have left. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and pin this down. But if this was a wording, I would have just gone ahead to iron because it sticks, but for this I actually have to stitch it. So I went ahead to pin this in order for it not to move, so it can stay at a place. So you can see what I have right now. I'm simply going to stitch the two sides using 1/4 inch. So I also do the same for the side of my dress, and I'll pin this, making sure that everything aligns perfectly. So you can see how nice and neat this is already looking. So after pinning, I'll go ahead and stitch with 1/4 inch, just like I said earlier. So after stitching, this is what I have. So these excesses are the sides of my center front. I'll just go ahead and trim it off. So you can see what I have right here already. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to start by stitching all of these. So I'm going to place all of these right sides facing each other, and I'm going to start pinning from the base of this my blouse. So I'm not going to start from the top. You start from the base to pin. So I'll pin all the way to the top part, and please notch your under bust area. But why I didn't notch mine is because most times I make this mistake by cutting off excesses. So this is what I have after pinning the two sides, and I'm just going to simply mark 1/2 inch with my chalk all the way to the upper part of this my blouse and stitch. So after stitching, you can see what I have right here. It's already looking nice, and I'll go ahead to retake the measurement I have here, and you can see for yourself that this is 1/2 inch. So the next thing I'm simply going to do is to get this my self-created tailor's ham, because I'm going to iron this seam open. Okay, so this is how you do it. You place this like this, you open up this like this, you spray water, make sure you spray enough water, and you are going to iron this open just the way you're seeing me illustrate this right here. So as at the time I was doing this, there was no light, so I had to wait till there was light. That was when I ironed this, so that's why I didn't iron this immediately. Okay, so for the back part of this my dress, I'm yet to join, so I've also gone ahead to iron my stay on it, and I'm just going to also place this like this, and also use my paper to know the parts that is going for the order. So that's why it's necessary to give this that arrow. Okay, so that is it. So I'll go ahead as well again to join all of these pieces together. I'll first of all go ahead by pinning this first, and after pinning I will simply mark half of an inch all the way and also stitch. So after stitching, I'll also iron the half of an inch open. So whatever it is you are stitching, please make sure you iron this open. So I'll repeat all of this method also on my lining piece. Okay, everything I did for my actual fabric, I'll be repeating the same thing for my lining piece. So that's it, and I've gone ahead now to iron this seam open and also iron this my blouse, so you can see what it looks like right here. So this enables it to be flat and fine. So this is also again for my skirt parts. I cut out for my skirt piece, my lining piece, sorry, and my actual fabric. And for my back blouse, you can see what I have. I ironed this open and it's looking all flat and nice. So I'll also bring my lining piece and place it right size with my fabric, and I'm going to stitch all around this using 1/4 of an inch, excluding the armhole area. I'll also repeat the same process for my front blouse, because I'm here to join this with the skirt part to turn into a gown, so I'm going to call it blouse. So I stitch all of these parts. I'm going to leave the armhole area open, and from that armhole area is where I'll be turning this all out. So that's exactly what I did right here, and that was the little explanation I was trying to give. So now for my skirt, I also went ahead to place my lining right size facing my fabric, and guess what, at the length of your skirt, cut out 1 inch from your lining piece, so that by the time you stitch and turn, this is what it's going to look like. So you're going to have exactly this. So just reduce 1 inch from your actual length of your skirt. So this is for the front side. I'm yet to turn it out. You can see that I stitched every other part and left like 3 inches opening at the sides, and I'll be turning out from there. So you can see that I've turned out, and the same advice I gave you of reducing 1 inch from the actual length of your skirt or your gown will make this have this look. So after this, I'm going to now join my front side of my the front part of my blouse here with the back of my blouse. So firstly, I'll start by joining the sides. So making sure that the armhole corresponds, the front and the back armhole area corresponds, I'm going to use my pin and pin all of these together. And after pinning, you can see that mine aligns. Everything about this aligns with mine. Okay, so you can see after pinning the two sides, I'm going to stitch down by 1.5 inch, because that was the stitching or sewing allowance that was given to this dress. So I'm going to use my chalk and mark this firstly. So after marking this, I'll go ahead and stitch down. So now for my skirt parts, I'm going to also place the front side of my skirts and the back part of my skirt, but I actually skipped the ruffle part because I was meant to place this firstly before pinning the front part and the back part of my skirt. I also stitched my darts. But I realized this late. I mean the ruffles part of the skirt, I had to lose the skirt when I was done sewing to fix my ruffles, but I will still show you how to do that right here on this video. So I'm going to get the center part of my skirt and also the center part of my blouse and notch it, and I'll make sure that the two notches are facing each other right sides like this. I'm going to pin this down, and after pinning, this is what I have. So I'm going to stitch using 1/2 inch, and while stitching, I'm going to stitch or sew this open. So I've stitched that down, and you can see what I have. So the next is to fix my zipper to this dress. So it was at this point, after fixing my zipper, I realized the mistake. I had to tear the sides of this my gown open in order to fix my ruffles. So I had to fold this in a flame manner, okay, or in a flare form, by folding firstly into two, and from the top area I folded again and also made a triangular shape from the side like this. So for the opening, I marked 3. And for the length, I marked 8 inches, but I later realized that it was too long. I had to reduce this. So during the process of the reduction, I had to use the parts I thought I wasn't going to make use of. Okay, so please pardon me. So that was simply all I did right here, and it was enough for my ruffles because I didn't need much because of the length of my skirt. So after trimming this off, I separated the two, and I realized that the smaller parts actually gave me what I wanted, so I opted for it. So I had to divide this into two. You can see what it's already looking like, and I'm going to just hem or fold the rough edges. So after all of that, I went ahead to cut out this piece, which is 25 inches long and 8 inches wide. So I went ahead to stitch all of these parts, but I left half of an inch at the two sides at the top area there, and also stitched like half of an inch because I created a channel which my elastic will be passing through. Permit or pardon me because this was a bit dark. It was already dark and they took the lights at this point, but I had to do this part before I stopped to continue for the next day. So this was the only part that had this bad quality. So the next day I had to continue like this. So I am trying to cut out for the band of this sleeve. So you know the part that has this combination, so that's the part I'm cutting out for the sleeve. So I went ahead to get the circumference of my elbow, because the sleeve, the puffy part, stops at the elbow, which is 12. So the wrist, I went ahead to mark the length of 11 inches, including the stitching or joining allowance. So I went ahead to connect from my elbow all the way to my wrist, and this is what I have. So I'll go ahead now to cut this out. After cutting out now, you can see what I have. So I'm going to stitch all of these at the sides and at the bottom parts. I left little inches where I turned out from, and I took this in and stitched as well. So I got the midpoint of this my band and notched it, and also got the midpoint of this my sleeve and also notched this. So I'm going to make sure that I make sure that the notch parts meet, and I have 12 as my round sleeve, so I went ahead to divide it into 2 equal halves. I marked where this 12 inches stopped, using that notch part as my guide. So I made sure that the notch part on my band and on my sleeve aligned, so I went ahead to pin this down, of which later I went ahead to pin my band to my sleeve, and you can see that it has these excesses at the middle. So for the pinning, I stopped exactly where I marked. I got my 6 inches at both sides, making it 12. So all I'm going to do is that as I'm stitching on my sewing machine, I'm going to be pleating all of this, just as you can see I'm trying to illustrate right here. So I pleated, and after pleating I joined one hand for you to see what it looks like, and this is what I got. But I'm going to show you how I fixed this sleeve to the body of this my dress. So you can see the part that I'm yet to stitch. What I did was to measure my armhole, and I had 4.5 inches. I brought my sleeve, and from the top area I also measured 4.5 inches. So I made a mark right there and also pinned this, meaning that I'm going to stitch and stop exactly at this 4.5 inches. I hope you understand. So I'm stitching this using the 1 inch extra inch for sewing allowance and stop exactly at the 4.5 inches. So you can see that I've gone ahead to do this, and the next I'm going to do is to get my armhole area, okay, and I'm going to open up the part where I stopped on my sleeve, the 4.5 inches, and also open my armhole area like this and pin this together. So I'm going to join one side to the armhole, and you can see what it looks like. I don't know if my explanation is not really clear enough. I believe you can see everything I'm doing right here on this video. So I'm going to stitch one part, and after stitching I'll stitch the other part, guys. And that was all for this tutorial. So the next I'm going to do is to show you the final look, of which you've seen already at the beginning of this video. Thank you so much for coming this far to watch this video, and if you are yet to subscribe, I kindly urge you to please subscribe to my channel, like this video and share this video. Thank you so much for always supporting me right here on this channel. I am most grateful. Thank you, and to all my returning subscribers, may the good Lord bless you all bountifully. Okay, so till some other time, see you on the same channel. Bye.